King Kong vs. Godzilla. King Kong vs. Godzilla was released in 1963 and is acted by Ishirô and Tom Montgomery, and basically the frontal story of the epic battle between King Kong and Godzilla. As we see earlier in the film, Godzilla quite literally emerged from an iceberg in the middle of nowhere, and he starts traveling back to Tokyo, Japan, because apparently he was born there. But at the same time though, we are also introduced to this television producer who wants a monster for himself. I'm not kidding, this is all in the plot of the film. And so basically he tells his colleagues to go to Faroe Island. No, not Skull Island, Faroe Island, to go and bring back a monster to Tokyo. So basically his colleagues go to Faroe Island, and long story short, they bring back King Kong. And in doing so, King Kong and Godzilla will ultimately fight each other because, well, they are both monsters. That's quite literally the reason they're given the film. And that's basically the main plot of the film. That's what overstands for in there. For example, the explanation for why King Kong is so big in this film, why he's so huge, why he is a monster in the film, is because he eats red berries. I'm not joking. That's the reason they're given the film. And at the same time, though, we do follow this certain group of characters who we were introduced to at the start of the film, and then they come in and out of the film as well. But the main plot of the film revolves around the epic battles between King Kong and Godzilla. And this film is absolutely terrible. But you know what? It is so enjoyable. It's so much fun to watch. I mean, film-wise, it is just terrible. I'm going to talk about that in this review. But at the same time, though, I must admit, I watched this film last night for like the 105th time, but the first time in a while, actually saying that. I've watched it from like so many times, but I watched it last night for the first time in a long while, and actually, I just enjoyed the heck out of it. I laughed and I smiled, probably for the wrong reasons, but you know what? This film, it's so bad, it's great. Honestly, it really is. I must admit, I watched this film as a kid so many times. I watched this film as a kid more times than I probably care to admit, because honestly, I used to feel so intense in so many sequences of the film. So many sequences where you see like Godzilla coming out of the horizon or something, or Godzilla about to go close to the kites that we follow in the film, or at the same time though, the moments where King Kong finally emerged in the film and everything. It always felt so intense watching this as a child. Now watching it last night, I was like, oh my god, this is hilarious. This is absolutely brilliant, because that's what it is. It's not a good film. Don't go into expecting that, but you know what? I had such a good time watching this film, and that's what I'm getting into in this review today. But first of all, I must talk about the fact that I watched the English-speaking language version of this film. Now, from what I've found out, from what I guessed, what I found out on the IMDb page for the film, basically, there were two versions of this film. There's a version of this film that came out in 1962, which is a Japanese-speaking version, so it just has Japanese-speaking characters in it. But the version I watched is from 1963, and basically, from what I've guessed, is they re-brought the version out, they remade the version, but they ordered the Japanese-speaking characters with English-speaking voices. So basically what you have in the film is you have Japanese-speaking characters talking and everything, but then by the time their mouths are shut, the overdubbing is still going on, and the overdubbing is just brilliant in the film. It's absolutely awful. I mean, that never bothered me when I was a kid. I'm gonna be honest. When I was watching as a kid, I just cared about the Godzilla and the King Kong fights. But when I was watching last night, I'm like, oh, your mouth's shut, but you're still speaking, and that's just brilliant in the film. But at the same time, though, yes, I watched the English-speaking language version, the version that was older with English-speaking actors. But there are actually English-speaking characters in the film, which also look like their lines of dialogue have been so awfully overdubbed, and that's just brilliant. I know this film was made in the 60s. I know it isn't going to be like a full-on masterpiece, and it isn't going to have the special effects that, you know, all these monster films like, you know, Kong Skull Island and Godzilla King of the Monsters and, you know, the 2014 Godzilla have nowadays, because this film was made in the early 60s. But, you know, overdubbing in the early 60s wasn't that hard to do. I've seen a good couple of Hitchcock films. I mean, look at Help, the Beatles film, which I not too long ago reviewed on this channel. That has overdubbing in it, but done actually rather well. But in this film, the overdubbing is just... it's brilliant. Like, literally, mouths be well shut. Even with English-speaking characters, their mouths be shut, but they'll still be speaking because in the overdubbing. And it's fantastic. Honestly, it's such a bad, but at the same time, brilliant film. Because like I said, yes, it was made in the early 60s. So you didn't have the special effects. You didn't have the, you know, the big CGI effects you can do nowadays. And so what you have with King Kong and Godzilla is two people dressed up in costumes. And it's so brilliant. Honestly, it really is. I mean, King Kong in this film alone, his face changes. Like, when you get a long shot of King Kong, you know, you get a full shot of the big monster. His face will look one way, and then when you get a close-up of King Kong in the film, his face will look completely different. I'm like, what is this continuity? This is brilliant! But anyway, let's talk about the film as a whole. First of all, let's talk about the introduction to Godzilla in this film. It's so brilliant. Literally, right, he emerges from an iceberg in the middle of nowhere, and most of it, okay, it didn't make a bit of sense because there was this disturbance with this iceberg in the middle of nowhere, but you know already that's going to be Godzilla. That's definitely going to be Godzilla, because who else would have emerged from an iceberg? And so you get this whole sequence where Godzilla emerges from the iceberg, and it's just brilliant. Like, you see the iceberg starting to break, and like, okay, that's Godzilla. Okay, the iceberg is still breaking. It's still breaking. It's still breaking. Okay, it's taking a while to break now, and it's just so brilliant because you know Godzilla's going to pop out of it, and then it just takes a while to break. But then when Godzilla does pop out of it, there's this guy in a helicopter hovering above the iceberg, and then he sees Godzilla and goes, "It's Godzilla!" And it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Like, first of all, how do they know it's Godzilla? Second of all, what? That doesn't make any sense, that scene. It's just, it's great. And then you see Godzilla come out of the thing for the first time, and it's a big Godzilla war. And you know, nowadays in the Godzilla films, you get the big Godzilla war. Like, wow, that is a moment. Like, say all about Godzilla King of the Monsters. Whenever Godzilla does his big, war in that film, I can't do it. When he does that big Godzilla war, like something like Godzilla King of the Monsters, or even Jared Edwards' Godzilla, you're like, wow. That is one heck of a moment. What is it in this film? His mouth doesn't even move, and it's brilliant. Literally, the introduction to Godzilla is genius. And at the same time, though, then Godzilla starts traveling to Tokyo, Japan, and you see this interaction between the Japanese army and Godzilla, and it's done fantastically. Then you get all these tanks lining up to shoot down Godzilla. And by the way, because Godzilla is just a guy in a costume, it's just a guy in a big Godzilla costume, what you actually have is just these toy model tanks. And it's done so brilliant. It looks like stop motion. And it's fantastic because you have all these like toy tanks, and they're so obviously toy tanks. Well, they were last night. I must admit, when I was watching this as a child, I never actually realised they were toy tanks. Boy, I was stupid. But anyway, watching it last night, I was like, oh my god, these are model toy tanks, and they're all lined up to shoot at Godzilla. And then you get this one which starts shooting at Godzilla, and then Godzilla burns this one tank, and then all the other tanks start retreating. And it's just like, you're just gonna give up after one tank got burned. Oh, wow. And then you see all these, model toy tanks retreating away from this man dressed in a Godzilla costume. I mean, it's clearly just a man dressed in a Godzilla costume. It clearly is. It doesn't even look that great. But anyway, then you get introduced to this television producer who basically, he wants a monster for himself. And this is unbelievably stupid. I mean, don't get me wrong, characters are always stupid in these monster films. Even Peter Jackson's King Kong, which I think is probably the best monster film made yet. So many characters are stupid in that film. I mean, Godzilla King of the Monsters, so many characters are stupid. Or even Kong Skull Island, there's quite a lot of characters that are stupid in that one. Samuel Jackson's character wants to kill King Kong. Yeah, that's not going to happen. But then you get into this film, and a television producer wants a monster himself. So basically, at this moment in the film, I'll provide a bit of context. People of Tokyo are all evacuating because Godzilla is coming to Tokyo. He's getting very, very close now. But this television producer is pretty adamant to have a monster for himself. So he tells his colleagues to go to Faroe Island. They clearly couldn't get the rights to Skull Island, so he goes to Faroe Island. But anyway, he goes to Faroe Island, and it's brilliant when they get to Faroe Island because you got the natives there. But the way these colleagues, reason with the natives of the island is through this radio and cigarettes. I'm not even joking. There's actually moments in the film where these colleagues from the television producer, send these colleagues to Faroe Island and giving cigarettes to native kids in the film. And that's how they reason with the natives of the island. They give them a radio and cigarettes. That is just genius. I mean, all the other King Kong films really should have looked at this one as like a blueprint, When you get to the natives, you know what you should do? Give them a radio and cigarettes. Brilliant! But anyway, then you get the first introduction to King Kong in this film. And I must admit, no sarcasm here, the first introduction to King Kong is actually done rather well. They get this whole octopus sequence, which by the way, Kong Skull Island did a little bit of a homage to. There's a whole octopus sequence in Kong Skull Island, which like, that's a homage to King Kong vs Godzilla, the 1963 film, and that I didn't realise they were doing that. Actually, in this film, you get this squid sequence where, this big giant squid is about to kill some of the natives on the island, and so King Kong comes out and saves some of the natives, and ultimately kills this big giant squid. And I mean, yes, the fight sequence between the squid and King Kong is very much outdated now, but actually, it's done rather well. I mean, obviously, when King Kong is actually fighting this squid, it doesn't look like a real squid at all, but still, it's not a bad introduction. I thought that was actually done rather well. No sarcasm there at all. I mean, honestly, I did think it was done rather well in the film. But at the same time, though, then you get to see King Kong drinking this red berry juice. And this is apparently how King Kong grows to be the size he is, because he drinks this red berry juice. I'm not joking, there's actually a scene in the film where you see King Kong drinking this red berry juice. And this is the moment in the film where you literally, King Kong has two different faces. Literally, when you get the big long shot of him, when you get the big full shot of King Kong, he has one face, and you get the close-up of King Kong drinking the red berry juice, I was like, that's a different face from the other shot that we've seen King Kong. What? Why is King Kong got two different faces in this film? He's like, well, what doesn't make any sense? But what's even better is the red berry juice stuff, because like, oh, that's how King Kong becomes big, because he drinks red berry juice. Honestly, it's genius, this film. It's so good. But anyway, then King Kong gets taken back to Tokyo. Gets taken away by these colleagues who've been sent around, and they take him back to Tokyo. But on the way back to Tokyo, he basically frees his way out of this towboat that's been tying to Tokyo. He makes his own way to Japan, and basically, long story short, he faces off against Godzilla in the first battle between Godzilla and King Kong. And basically, this sequence is fantastic because Godzilla is standing on this cliff, and King Kong is standing below this cliff, but he's looking up at him. All I can think of with this sequence is, I have the high ground. I mean, if you get that, you get that. I'm not going to go into it, but if you get it, you get it. And that's all I can think of with this sequence. Like, I have the high ground. Don't try, Godzilla. I have the high ground. It's brilliant, that moment in the film, because literally, I was like, oh my god, this is the fight. This is the first epic fight between Godzilla and King Kong. And literally, they don't even interact with each other. Godzilla just starts, breathing fire down on King Kong. And King Kong gets a bit hot and gets a bit fire with him. And then he gets a fire off, and that's literally the fight. But the thing is, what's so fantastic about the fight is the build-up to it. Is that you've got a few seconds of build-up, and you just see King Kong walking towards Godzilla doing this. It's like he's bigging himself up to fight Godzilla, and then they don't even fight each other. It's just Godzilla standing on a cliff, like, I have the high ground, and then he's firing fire down on King Kong, and that apparently defeats King Kong. And at the same time, though, in this first fight sequence between King Kong and Godzilla, you have the television producer who, sponsors King Kong, watching the fight take place, and he's betting on who's going to win in the fight, and what doesn't make any sense? He's like, heads for King Kong, tails for Godzilla, and then literally it goes tails, and like, oh no, King Kong's gonna lose, and then that's literally what happens. Like, what is this? This is brilliant. But anyway, basically, long story short, Godzilla starts traveling around more of Tokyo, and so does King Kong, getting ready for the next big epic fight. And this was like, you just see like King Kong and Godzilla just terrorizing Tokyo. That's what this section of the film is, quite literally. And actually, no sarcasm here. There's some good sequences where you actually see Godzilla and King Kong, terrorizing Tokyo. I mean, obviously, they're really outdated now, and I was watching them last night, like, okay, that action sequence is just still terribly, but I must admit, I get what they're trying to do here, and it does kind of work to a degree, because you don't actually see this sequence where all these people are evacuating from this train because Godzilla is getting closer now, and you get this guy who wants to save his girlfriend before Godzilla gets to her, and it actually works really well, because I remember watching this scene as a kid, and just feeling really intense with this guy before Godzilla gets there, and that works really well. I mean, as a kid, when I watched it last night, I was like, and I must admit as well, I didn't find Godzilla that threatening when I watched the film last night. Like, literally, he just clearly looked like a guy in a costume, but again, that was done brilliantly. At the same time, though, you get this whole scene between King Kong, and he also picks up a train and everything, and he takes this female character out the train. By the way, this female character who we've kind of known at this point. We've been introduced to her in the film, earlier in the film, and she's been in this train now. Basically, King Kong picks her out of this train. And what's so brilliant is you get this shot of, King Kong holding this woman. It actually looks like there's a woman in King Kong's hand. But then you get a close-up of King Kong when he's looking down at the woman, and it just looks like he's looking down at a doll, a female doll. And it's brilliant, because that's what we've been looking at, because obviously this was made in the 60s, so you didn't have the special effects that you do now, and it is just brilliant. Just looking at the shot, like, he's holding a doll. King Kong's holding a doll there. He's not holding the woman, he's holding a doll. What's even better in this sequence as well is when King Kong's, holding this woman, she's like, get off me, get away from me. You get the whole Japanese army just watching on as if it's just some random guy. I mean, it was like, this is meant to be a giant monster in the film. This has got the whole Japanese army just watching on King Kong as it picks up this random one from a train. I'm like, do something, you're meant to be the army. And as you get this guy who's got these binoculars, just like, King Kong's doing this now. King Kong's doing this now. Like, this is just brilliant. I mean, you're meant to be the army, and you're not doing anything at all for this woman who's clearly in peril. And it's just like, this is just fantastic. Then it gets even better. It gets so much better, because early in the film we've seen one of the main characters that we follow in the film use this string, which is apparently is as strong as rope. And basically we see him messing about with it. And honestly, when we see him messing about at the start of the film, it honestly looks like a bit of an advert for Japanese products. I must admit, it looks like they're putting in a bit of an advert for the product there. But here's where it gets even better. That string, which apparently is as strong as rope, which is seen this character use earlier in the film, comes back because the army needs to transport King Kong to Godzilla to stop Godzilla from terrorizing more of Japan. So basically, to do so, they use this string, which is apparently as tough as rope, and tie King Kong to helicopters to transport him to where Godzilla is. I'm not joking, that actually happens in the film. And it is just brilliant. Like, helicopters carrying King Kong, that's one thing, okay, that's one thing. But then you get this string, which you just kind of think was a throwaway, like, product, Japanese product that they advertised outside the movie, which is a bit, self-advertising to put in there, comes back and apparently helps transport King Kong over to Godzilla. Wow, it's just brilliant. This string that is apparently as tough as rope transports King Kong to Godzilla. And when they transport, King Kong to Godzilla, he literally looks like he's a puppet that's being held off by these helicopters. And it's just brilliant. It really, really is. But then you get the final fight between King Kong and Godzilla. And honestly, this fight is just, it's so bad, it's great. I was laughing my head off when I watched this fight in the film last night, because clearly it wasn't choreographed. Clearly there wasn't any, thought put into the fight sequence. Clearly the director just kind of stood back and just went, fight each other, because that's what it literally looks like. Honestly, half the time it looks like they were hugging. It just looked like, Godzilla, King Kong, Godzilla. And then at the same time, though, King Kong is about to be defeated. Godzilla's almost won. King Kong's about to be defeated. Godzilla's throwing rocks and everything. But then, lightning strikes, and apparently, lightning powers up King Kong in the film. I'm not joking, this generally happens. It powers up King Kong in the film, then King Kong awakes back up and gets back out and fights Godzilla in one last big epic fight. And literally, King Kong picks up Godzilla by the tail and wiggles him around. Literally, just wiggles him around. Like, this is brilliant. This is what all, fight scenes with Godzilla should be like nowadays. All the big Godzilla villains just pick him up by the tail. That's what should happen in the new Godzilla v Kong. Just King Kong picks him up by the tail. Honestly, if they do that in the new Godzilla film, I will just stand up in the cinema and just applaud. I will just thank you, because that's literally what happens in the film. He picks up Godzilla by the tail and wiggles him around, and then they start fighting again, and then they roll down this hill, and literally they're fighting even more, and they both roll down into the water, and it's heavily implied that King Kong has won, and he's the only monster that is still alive. Although we don't actually see, Godzilla die, it's heavily implied that he does die, because we don't actually see him get out of the water. They just basically both roll into the water, and the only one that we see actually come up from the water is King Kong. Apparently, King Kong was a savior in the end. He was the one to save the people of Tokyo, the people of Japan, from Godzilla. And that's basically what happens in the film. Honestly, I just touched the surface though. It gets so much better, so much funnier than I made it out to be. It truly is. I mean, I was laughing my head off in so many sequences, because it's truly hilarious. Honestly, it's so funny. Literally, from the first scene, we get this doctor who's English speaking, by the way. It looks like all of his lines of dialogue are being overdubbed. It's talking about how these red berries make King Kong grow the size he is. And it's just like, oh, this is going to be brilliant. And then you get the instructions to Godzilla, and that's done brilliant. They get the instructions to King Kong, and that's done brilliant. And honestly, the action sequences between Godzilla and King Kong, whether they're with each other, or whether they're just, action sequences on their own, where, they're picking up a train or something, or they're terrorizing the train, or they're about to step on a train, or you get the sequence between Godzilla and these tanks. It's done so brilliant, because it's so outdated now that when you're watching it, you're just literally laughing your head off. But the thing is, though, it does what it needs to do. It provides you on, that big monster action. That's kind of why I like this film. I mean, that's kind of why I think this film's so enjoyable. I mean, like I said, I have a bit of a soft spot for this film, because I did go watching it. This is one of those films which I watched so many times as a child, more times than I really care to admit. I think I used to watch like every Saturday for a long time, because I just used to love the Godzilla and King Kong sequences, because in my opinion, that's what you want from a film, and that's what you wanted from this film, and that's what it makes it do. And honestly, I just love that moment. I didn't care about all the characters in the film, but when you have King Kong Godzilla in the film, it's brilliant. I mean, clearly, quite a lot of the sequences just between those two, especially that, final fight sequence between them two, just hasn't been planned. And it's just like the directors just, standing behind the camera and go, just fight each other, go. And it's done so brilliantly. Honestly, it really is. And it's so bad, though. It's so badly made. Like, it's really bad. It's so badly made. And I get, they're trying to do a big monster movie back in the 60s, which would have been hard to do. I mean, obviously, because we don't have the special effects we do now. What you get when you watch this film nowadays is just the hilarious moments between those two monsters, which are just outdated so badly, but at the same time, though, are so enjoyable to watch. I laughed my head off way too much in the film last night. Probably not like the way the film wanted to. Like, there are some funny moments in the film which I think the film wants you to laugh at, but I was laughing at the completely wrong moments. The moment when you see Godzilla coming from the distance and he's stepping on a train and everything, it's just like, you're meant to feel like it's threatening. Because honestly, I find it way too funny. That's what I love about it. I really do. I laugh my head off. I enjoyed the hell out of it. So many times you see a film and it is just plain bad. It's plain bad that annoys you. But this film is so bad that, you know, all common sense goes out the window. I mean, it went out the window literally the first scene when you learn that King Kong is King Kong because he eats red berries. And then you just kind of sit there and go, yep. This is what I want from a monster film. Make all monster films now this nowadays. Okay, away from the sarcasm now. I must admit, I do have some general problems with this film. No sarcasm here. First of all, I think all the army sequences in the film with the army when they're talking about what they're going to do with Godzilla and King Kong are just plain boring in my opinion. Especially when you have these really incredible action sequences between King Kong and Godzilla, or where they're just alone individually. And then you get this cut back to the army talking about what they're going to do, and it's just, I didn't care about that, I must admit. It was just kind of throwaway, and it wasn't that interesting in my opinion. And so that is actually one of my criticisms with the film. But at the same time though, one thing which I think is genuinely good about the film is the musical score. The musical score of the film is done by, I might pronounce his name okay, I apologize if I am, Akira Ifukube. I think that's how I pronounce his name. I apologize if it's not. It's actually a really good monster score, I must admit. Every time I hear the score for this film, it makes you think King Kong vs Godzilla. And that's what I like about it, because that's what the score's meant to do. It's meant to remind you of the film, and that's what it does. Every time I hear the score of the film, it's like, yep, now I'm going to watch King Kong vs Godzilla, and I'm so happy that I am. And so I do actually think the musical score of the film is genuinely good. That's not being sarcastic there. I think it works really, really well. Although, everything else in the film is just rubbish. But it's so rubbish that it's so much fun. That's what it is. It's so bad, it's great. It's fun rubbish. And I think this is the definition of a monster film, that it's so bad, it's great. Like, you get loads of monster films like nowadays, or loads of monster films which are just plain bad. But this is a monster film that it's so bad, it's great. But this is a monster film that just takes stupidity, brings it to a whole new level, and literally goes, enjoy it. And that's what I did. Honestly, it's rubbish. It's terribly made. It really is. But you know what? It's so damn enjoyable. And so all in all, I'm going to say that King Kong vs Godzilla is a 10 out of 10. No, not really. Film-wise, it's probably about a 2 out of 10. I do think it tries to do some things right. I do think it kind of succeeds in some stages. At the same time, though, I do actually quite like the musical score in the film. But, film-wise, it is about a 2 out of 10. It's so badly made. It really is. But, enjoyment-wise, it's a 9 out of 10. It's so enjoyable to watch, because it is so bad. It is just awful. It's such an awful film, but at the same time, though, it's hard not to enjoy it. It's hard not to sit there and just go, I can't help but enjoy this, because I'm laughing at how bad the overdubbing is. I'm laughing at how bad the action sequence is. I'm laughing at how bad the sequence is between King Kong and Godzilla in the film. Because literally, the film is called King Kong vs Godzilla, but the action sequence between those two characters, especially towards the end, they look like the hugging. It looks like the fight scene, like the hugging. Like, it does literally feel like the director just kind of sat behind the camera. It's like, look like you're fighting, look like you don't really get along, and just like, it doesn't work. And that's what's so great about it, though. At the same time, though, the explanation for where these monsters come from is brilliant. Literally, Godzilla emerges from an iceberg in the middle of nowhere. This iceberg, you know, creating disturbance, and then, oh, Godzilla comes out of it. Didn't see that coming. And at the same time, though, you get King Kong, who's King Kong because he eats red berries, and you get these characters who reason with the natives via a radio and cigarettes. This string, which is apparently as strong as well, which you're introduced to early on in the film, comes back later on to carry King Kong by helicopters, and this string, which apparently is the strongest rope, to Godzilla all the way over on this other part of Japan, and it's done so well, and I laughed my head off. And you know what? It brought back so many memories of just me watching the film as a kid, to smile at all the Godzilla and King Kong sequences, because that's why I think the film works so well. You know, I've said it before in my monster film reviews, and I'll say it again. I have a soft spot for monster films. You know, whether they're rubbish or not, I just have a soft spot for them. I think this film is where that soft spot comes from, because I watched the film so many times as a kid, and it's a terrible film. But you know what? It's so fucking enjoyable, and that's what I love about it. And like I said, you know, film-wise, this movie is a 2 out of 10. But, enjoyment-wise, it's a 9 out of 10. Honestly, I absolutely love watching this film. It's so bad, it's great. And I love that about it. I laughed, I smiled, and it's a terrible film. But you know what? I just absolutely love it. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that King Kong vs Godzilla is a 9 out of 10 from me. Anyway, Anyway guys, what do you think of King Kong vs Godzilla? Please do comment down below and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Anyway guys, thank you as always for watching, and if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this video, and look forward to many more both film and TV coming very soon on this channel. See you guys again soon, but bye for now, bye!